March 1943. On the wind-scored desert plain of eastern Washington, a Caterpillar D8-8R bulldozer fires up before sunrise. The operator climbs onto an open metal seat and drops the blade. He has no idea what he is building. The site spans nearly 500,000 acres of Columbia River Basin desert, flat, dry, and almost entirely empty. 88% of it is raw sagebrush country where 20,000 sheep have grazed for decades. Now the D8s are rolling straight through the middle of it. Workers on the job are told only what their task requires, nothing more. Foremen repeat the same phrase at every shift start: do your work and don't ask questions. Rumors among the crew range from airplane fuel to nylon stockings. What these D8-8R operators are actually clearing is the ground for the world's first full-scale plutonium production reactor, Site W of the Manhattan Project. The blade work always comes first. The secret always comes last. To understand this, go back to December 2, 1942. Enrico Fermi's team achieves the first controlled nuclear chain reaction beneath the Chicago Stadium. The Manhattan Project now has its proof of concept, and it urgently needs a factory. General Leslie Groves assigns Colonel Franklin T. Matthias to find a production site. On January 1943, Matthias reports to Groves: Hanford, Washington is far more favorable in virtually all respects than any other. Groves visits on January 16 and approves. Grand Coulee Dam's high-voltage transmission lines already cross the property. The terrain beneath the sagebrush is dense Ice Age river gravel over basalt, firm enough to support structures unlike anything ever built. The site is officially codenamed Site W and assigned to DuPont Corporation. On February 8, 1943, Secretary of War Stimson authorizes the acquisition. Some 4,218 individual tracts, totaling 428,000 acres, are condemned under the Second War Powers Act, one of the largest single land seizures in American history. About 5,500 residents of Hanford, White Bluffs, and Richland receive 30-day eviction notices. Farms are abandoned mid-season. The Army disinters 177 graves from the White Bluff Cemetery and moves them to Prosser, before the community is ever told why. DuPont opens its first Hanford construction office on February 25, 1943, in a rented basement room inside the Midstate Amusement Corporation building in Pasco. The project will ultimately consume 90% of DuPont's entire engineering staff and resources worldwide. Ground clearing at Site W officially begins in March 1943. The wartime Caterpillar D8-8R is the machine DuPont's contractors reach for first. A stripped-down 130 flywheel horsepower crawler built to run hard on defense contract timelines with no margin for breakdown. The D8-8R weighs approximately 15.5 tons, runs on a 6-speed transmission, and carries a Letourneau cable-operated blade. No enclosed cab protects the operator. He sits fully exposed to the desert wind, the alkali dust, and the diesel exhaust rolling back off the moldboard. If you want to see how D8 operators unknowingly graded the ground for the atomic age, here's what I ask. See that subscribe button? It's our exchange. Your way of saying this reached you. Hit subscribe if this resonated, drop a like if it moved you, and tell us in the comments what you know about the Manhattan Project. It helps us share more stories like this. Back to the D8s at Site W. Secrecy at Hanford is structural, not incidental. Employees know only what their immediate task requires. Nothing about adjacent operations, nothing about the final purpose. A D8 operator is given grid coordinates and a grade stake, never a building name. 5 separate production zones spread across the site require isolated road networks, rail connections, and utility corridors. Each zone has its own D8 clearing sequence. Each corridor must be fully graded before any foundation crew can set a single form. 3 reactor locations, 100B, 100D, and 100F, are positioned 6 miles apart along the Columbia River's south bank. Each pad must be cleared and leveled before concrete crews can arrive. The D8 comes first every single time. Colonel Franklin Theus, 34 years old, commands Site W with the precision he refined building the Pentagon. He drives deadline compliance through DuPont field supervisors. The D8 fleet is his ground instrument. the machine that makes every subsequent trade possible. The mechanical evolution of bulldozers, history's most punishing projects, and the technical details no one else covers. That's what lives in the membership section. Join and you get full access to 20-plus minute deep dives built for people like you. Now back to the D8s at Site W. By summer 1943, the Columbia Basin turns hostile. Temperatures regularly exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. D8 operators run in rotating intervals, goggles caked with alkali dust, the blade barely visible through the heat shimmer rising off the desert floor. Dust storms strike without warning. Workers call them termination winds because they drive crew members to walk off the job on the spot and demand their separation pay. D8 operators wrap scarves across their faces and keep the blade down. The desert terrain is more complex than it appears. Sandy topsoil gives way quickly to dense Ice Age river gravel, the same aggregate that first impressed Matthias's survey party in December 1942. The D8's tracks spread its load efficiently across that compacted Columbia Basin floor. Groundbreaking for the B Reactor water cooling plant at 100B occurs on August 27, 1943. DuPont's field crews have been clearing reactor pads and cutting grade for nearly 6 months by then. The desert site is unrecognizable. Construction on the B Reactor building begins in October 1943. The nuclear physicists in Chicago are still resolving critical calculations, while DuPont's contractors are already pouring foundations on the desert floor. They are building ahead of the blueprints. What those D8s leveled will support a 36-foot graphite cube weighing 2,200 tons, penetrated by 2004 aluminum process tubes designed to sustain a chain reaction at 250 million watts. This is what the grade stakes actually mark. African-American laborers pour the 23-foot-thick concrete foundation at 100B, among the earliest workers assigned to the reactor site. The workforce is rigidly segregated. All black crews under white foremen, separate barracks, and unequal pay for identical physical labor. The construction camp grows around the workers as they build it. First arrivals sleep in tents while barracks are framed beside them. Eventually, 195 barracks rise from the desert floor, every road and approach path graded by a D8. Security officers patrol the site around the clock. Questions about building purposes are actively discouraged. By October 1943, courthouse juries examining condemned land tracts are seeing DuPont identification badges on workers, and rumors of a secret industrial complex reach the Yakima Valley press. Matthias is alarmed by the courthouse attention. The security perimeter tightens. On December 7, 1943, the second anniversary of Pearl Harbor, a U.S. Senate investigator is turned away at the Hanford Gate on direct orders from General Groves. To staff this project, DuPont recruiters interview 262,040 applicants across the United States and hire 94 3-node 7. Heavy equipment operators are among the most prioritized. The site cannot grade, cut, or compact a single yard without them. 9,900 D8-8R units are manufactured between 1941 and 1945. Thousands routed directly to U.S. Army and defense contractor operations nationwide. At Site W, the machine runs the desert without rest, pushing diesel against sand and silence. DuPont's project demands 386 miles of new roads, 158 miles of railroad track, and more than 50 miles of electrical transmission lines, all cut from raw desert terrain. Every one of those grade lines started with a D8 pass. Labor shortages in mid-1943 forced DuPont to consolidate. All available resources, including every D8 on the site, are redirected to the 100B reactor zone. The other production areas pause. The first pile takes priority. Everything else waits. The D8-8Rs D13,000 diesel runs continuously under full load. No scheduled cooling period. No rest built in the shift plan. The machine is pushed because the timeline is not negotiable. The reactor must be operational before Germany builds one first. 8 mess halls run around the clock. 200 pounds of butter consumed daily. 32,000 glasses of milk poured every day. The logistics of feeding 22,000 workers across a 500,000-acre site matches the logistics of moving desert by the cubic yard. If these stories mean something to you, take a look at the thanks button below this video. It's a small gesture, but it's the most direct way to say you want more of this. Let's continue with the D8s and the B Reactor. The B Reactor building rises through autumn 1943 and into early 1944. Above the pad, the D8s leveled, 200 tons of graphite are stacked into a 36-foot cube, 2004 aluminum process tubes running through its full length. The workforce at 100B is rigidly segregated. African-American laborers work under white foremen, sleep in separate barracks, and receive lower wages for identical physical work. The machines and the human cost run on exactly the same schedule. B Reactor will require 75,000 gallons of Columbia River water per minute when operational, enough to supply a city of 1 million people. The pipe corridors that will carry that flow cross-grade that D8 blades cut months earlier. Construction of B Reactor is completed on September 13, 1944. 13 days later at 10:48 p.m., on September 26, the reactor achieves its first self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction. The margin for error across the entire 18-month build has been zero. A critical problem surfaces immediately after startup. Xenon-135 is poisoning the chain reaction and forcing the pile to shut down. But DuPont engineers had quietly added 800 extra process tubes to the reactor's original design. Those spare tubes saved the mission. B Reactor produces its first plutonium on November 6, 1944. D Reactor follows in December, F Reactor in February 1945. 3 full production lines are now running on ground that was bare sagebrush desert less than 2 years earlier. The D8 operators who cleared the 100B pad in spring 1943 are long transferred to 100D and 100F, repeating the sequence on new pads. No ceremony, no briefing. New coordinates, fresh sagebrush, same machine, same blade. Hanford's Plutonium shipped to Los Alamos under armed escort and is machined into the core of the Fat Man device. On July 16, 1945, it powers the Trinity test, the world's first nuclear detonation in the New Mexico desert. On August 9, 1945, Fat Man falls on Nagasaki, carrying plutonium produced in reactors built on ground that Caterpillar D8s cleared in 1943. Japan surrenders 6 days later. The war that the D8 operators never knew they helped end is over. When Hanford's secret is published in August 1945, most workers read the headline in silence. A desert grading job and an atomic bomb are not an obvious connection to hold in a single thought. Some operators do not speak of it for years. The final accounting at Site W, 554 buildings, 386 miles of roads, 158 miles of railroads, 780,000 cubic yards of concrete, and 40,000 tons of structural steel, all built from bare sagebrush desert in under 2 years at a cost of $230 million. The D8-8R survives the war and moves directly into post-war civilian work. Thousands of the 9,900 units built between 1941 and 1945 roll into contractor fleets across the country. The same machine that graded Site W is grading highways and new suburbs by 1946. B Reactor operates until February 1968, 24 years of continuous plutonium production. Declared a National Historic Landmark in 1976, it becomes part of the Manhattan Project National Historical Park in 2015. It is the only intact plutonium production reactor open to the public on Earth. Hanford today is the largest nuclear cleanup site in the United States, the direct legacy of the reactors those D8s enabled. Decades and billions of dollars into the remediation. The machines are gone. The consequence of what they built is not. The B Reactor sits quiet now, its graphite stacks sealed, its 2004 process tubes empty, its operators long gone. The D8-8Rs that cleared the desert for it are scattered to scrapyards and museum collections. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us preserve these machines and the histories behind them. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from.